Hey, my lovely goal-getters. Welcome to the Moms Making Money Show. I'm your host, Amie Pederson, business mentor and confidence coach for the emerging boss mom. It's my mission to help amazing women just like you up-level yourself and your business because you are meant for more than wiping boogers and folding laundry. I'm also a wife, mother, urban farmer, influencer, green juice enthusiast, and an unapologetic lover of cowboy boots. I can't wait to help you grow your business by sharing my tips, tricks, proven business strategy, experience, and incredible guests. Hang on tight and enjoy the show. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends and educational partners over at the Tailwind app. Tailwind has taken my social media scheduling from being in a total tailspin to well-planned, well-sourced, well-thought, and well-automated in posting. So what Tailwind is it helps you schedule out your posts for both Instagram and Pinterest. And even when you're in Pinterest, you can plug those pins right over onto Facebook. The other great thing is they have little communities and groups within Tailwind, so you can network with other amazing people in your niche and help you expand and grow in that way. They also have this really cool thing where they give you suggestions on hashtags. So this is not only like a huge time saver, but they also tell you like this hashtag is good, this hashtag is mediocre, and this hashtag is awesome, kind of like low, medium, high, cold, warm, hot type of thing. And this is so helpful, especially when you're just getting started and you're not really sure what hashtags you should use or could use. It gives you some suggestions. Of course, you don't have to use those, but it's kind of nice to have the little tips and pointers. So basically what you can do is you can plan out all of your stuff in advance. And they also have this thing called Smart Loop. So say if you post something for the holidays and you're posting something every year at Christmas or every year at Thanksgiving, a lot of girls I know did a 12 days of fitness. Or a 12 days of Christmas type of giveaway or course or training. That's something you could put onto a loop. So every year at Christmas time, you can automatically repin those posts and reshare that content without having to think about it. So the cool thing about Tailwind is, again, so super affordable, so super, super, super useful. Like it's been such an amazing resource for our team and for our company and for growing our Instagram and our Pinterest. We now have over 250,000 views on Pinterest just since we started using Tailwind, and it's been amazing. So Tailwind has agreed to give all of our listeners a free month just to give it a try. No credit card, no anything. And you can do that by going to tailwindapp.com/I/busyfitmomamie. And of course, that link will be right in the show notes for you to take advantage of a free full month. So I hope you guys enjoy using this app and really, really enjoy how easy it makes everything and how seamlessly you can integrate it into your business as a huge time saver. All right, everybody, I have Dr. Cortney Baker, business mentor here, and she is incredible. She's going to talk to us about a bunch of things, but let me just tell you a little bit about Cortney. She's an award-winning entrepreneur. She's the host of the Women in Business podcast, and she's also a TEDx speaker, along with being nationally recognized authority on women's leadership. She's also been featured on Fox News, Forbes, iHeartRadio, and the Huffington Post, among many, many others. She's got so many credentials, guys. I could just sit here and read them off to you guys all day long, but she's got a really great story that she's going to tell us today. And I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to her so we can dive right in. So Cortney, tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you become an entrepreneur and all of these amazing things.
Well, thank you so much, Amie. It's really great to be here with you. I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 27, 28, and pretty much decided that I was done being an undervalued employee I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but I knew I wasn't going to be doing it disrespected. So I was 4 months pregnant when I decided this, and it was right after September 11th. So the economy was in the toilet. All the chips were stacked against me. And took the plunge. And 16 years later, it's a pediatric healthcare company. We do speech, physical, occupational therapy, and nursing services for kids with disabilities. And I started it with me and 10 little patients who believed in the dream. And today we have over about 550 employees. We serve about 4,000 patients in 12 cities all over 3 states. And I'm currently Texas Businesswoman of the Year.
That's incredible. And congratulations on that. I love that.
Thank you.
I can't imagine that going from being 4 months pregnant, an economy that was in the toilet, and, a dream was an easy thing to convert that into now, a super successful, 8-figure business with over 500 employees. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that came to be?
Sure. So I started my adult journey as a single teenage mom. I had my son 6 months after I graduated from high school. And all my friends were going off to college, and I was going to the Medicaid and the food stamps office. And that was a really hard time. But that's where I feel like your trials are where you gain your character. And so I was waiting tables, double shifts at a restaurant called Black Eyed Pea. And then when my son was about 6 months old, I met my first husband, and we got married when my son was 1.5 years, and we moved to Illinois. And I got my undergrad and graduate degrees in speech pathology. And I loved being married, but I didn't love being married to him. So we got divorced when I call it my trial marriage. We got married, or we got divorced when my son was about 4.5. And we got divorced the day before my 3-year wedding anniversary. And so I put myself through school and moved back home to Texas when I finished, and did my first year out of school at a school district and hated what I did. I had a caseload of about 83 patients, and then I started doing pediatric home health and had a full caseload of about 18 patients, and was like, this is the best thing ever. But the place where I worked constantly would tell employees that they were replaceable, that anybody could do their job. I mean, it was just not a supportive environment. And I was only there for about 4 months when I realized, and my exact wording to myself was, I can do this shit myself. So yes. That's what I did. I just found a consultant online. My husband did, actually. My second husband, the one I'm still married to, he's a keeper. So he found a medical consultant online, and the consultant told me 3 times not to do it. And I finally was like, you know what? I appreciate your input. Do you want the job or not? And he realized I wasn't going to go away. And so I don't know if it was pity or just knew that I was determined, but he took the case and helped me get up and rolling. And we opened our doors October 27th of 2003, and that's when I had 10 patients.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that.
Thanks. Thank you.
So when you first started, and I feel like we all do this, I feel like everybody's journey is a little bit different. What was like your biggest obstacle besides obviously like, holy crap, this is something new? What did you feel like some of your biggest obstacles were that you overcame when you first got going, or even just as you were deciding to get going?
Well, one of the things that was the most pressing obstacle was the fact that I couldn't figure out the billing. And so I was having to put payroll because we started scaling super fast. So I was having to put payroll on credit cards and looking at the bills and seeing all the red, and then having everything from home being intertwined and being in the red too. And it was just like, oh my gosh, it was just too much. And it felt like that. And I thankfully had a really supportive I do have a really supportive husband, and he was working the night shift at a warehouse. And it was right after September 11th, and that was the only job he could find with benefits. And he would come home on Friday mornings, and I'd be under the covers in bed, and he would pull the covers back and he would say, Cortney, if it was easy, everyone would do it. Get your ass out of bed. You got a job to do, and people are depending on you. And that really was how I got through those dark times. That and the fact that 2 days after we opened our company, we were served some nice little papers from my former employer. Yeah. So I had that going on, and then the financial problems. I mean, it was a horrible, dark time. And just thankfully with his support, we plugged away and continued to do it. And you know what? The funny thing is that he knew that if it didn't work, we would have to file bankruptcy. But I didn't know that. So that was never an option. It was, you got to keep going. This has to work.
Right.
And thank God it did.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. And really just, so obviously having somebody so supportive to kind of kick you in the butt when you need it a little bit, but also to believe in you, as well as really knowing when it's time to hustle and when it's time to flow. That I think makes a big, big difference, because I feel like a lot of women, when they get started, they're either in all flow and no hustle, or they're in all hustle and no flow. And they can't find a way to like juggle both of those to get somewhat of a balance.
Yeah.
So that's great. And I think that a lot of people also, they get into this idea that I'm going to be my own boss and everything's going to be butterflies and rainbows, and that it's going to be easy and it's not going to be hard. And then you do think about things like that, because I also, outside of my coaching business, I co-own an electrical company, and we do have to pay the payroll and pay the taxes and all the insurance. And there's more insurance, I think, than in a brick and mortar business than people actually realize, So, there's a lot of stuff that comes up. And I feel like a lot of times people are not quite educated in that. They just see like, oh, such and such is an entrepreneur, so I'm going to dive right in. And then they're like, oh, holy crap, being an entrepreneur has all these things. And wait, what? I have to pay taxes, and there's all these other things. And it's. Yes,
it's a huge commitment, and it's a huge journey. I mean, to think that things can be like an overnight success is just irrational to think that. I mean, they don't call it hustle for nothing. I mean, there's definitely some hustle in it. And if you don't have the spirit of hustle, then don't start the journey.
Yeah, I agree. There is work. There's a lot of work that goes into starting. I feel like the startup is a little bit more the hardest time, but every time you go to scale up, and the growth time can be, a little bit strenuous as well.
Yeah.
And scary, making investments and obviously paying out a ton of money in payroll is scary.
It is. And there have been times, when, I'm in healthcare. So there's definitely, I call it the entrepreneurial roller coaster. I mean, we are definitely on that, being in healthcare and being so tied to the government and whatever the government decides to do. Yeah. And there have been some scary times there too. And, but there's thankfully been that time of flow as well, that it's been, but that's those flow times. I get bored. I love the hustle. That's why now I help coach female millennial entrepreneurs to start and scale their own businesses, because I want them to see the power of when women commit to supporting other women, what that looks like.
Yes. Well, there's so much out there, and I feel like, I don't know, society in general, and I think it's starting to come back around, but it's not coming around. For me, it's not coming around quick enough, where you have some of those like bully women out there who they have this very distinct opinion about where a woman's place is. And, those vary. Some people, think that this entrepreneur thing is weird. Some people think that women shouldn't work. Like there's this whole gamut of opinions. But some of the women that I've encountered and that my clients have encountered are like, I call them like the negative nancies, right? Where they're just out there sitting behind their keyboards, putting people down instead of lifting people up and hoping and wishing for their, for them to do the best and for them to have the success. And for me, I don't know, that like literally breaks my heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my research found, because I went back and got my doctorate in leadership, and I looked at the gender divide and why so few women are at the top levels of leadership. I mean, when you look at the landscape in America, we are 50% of the workforce, women are, and then 50% of mid-level managers in the workforce. But at the top levels of leadership, women are only CEOs less than 5% of the time. And that pissed me off. And I was like, why are there so few women in the C level? And then I found research done by McKinsey and Company along with Lean In that said at the rate we've been going since 2012, we are more than 100 years away from gender equality in the C level. And that pissed me off even more. And I have 2 daughters. They're 11 and 15. And I said, this is not good enough for me. This isn't good enough for them. So what can I do to pour into the millennial generation so that I can affect my daughter's generation?
Yeah.
And so now my hashtag is screw 100 years, because I am creating CEOs today and I'm not waiting 100 years.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it, is if it weren't for women like you taking that step and taking a stand, really, then the pattern would never change. So they, some people may say like, okay, 100 years, that's doable. But people like us, we're like 100 years is unacceptable. And it makes me think back to when I worked in corporate, and I loved my job. I loved my boss and I was treated well. But I always told him, I don't want to be a glorified secretary for the rest of my life, and he was just like, well, your title isn't technically secretary. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I just don't want to be that, because at every level, there were still some people who were like, oh, she's his secretary. And even though I'm like, I was the operations manager of a corporation, I was like, not actually.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah, but the perception was still there. And I think that I feel like with what you're talking about here, I feel like tattoos will be more normalized and more accepted, which I have no problem with, than, this other transformation of getting more women in these CEO positions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, how are we in 2019? We can put a man on the moon, but we're fighting as women to have a seat at the boardroom, like in the boardroom. That's ridiculous. So what are we as women doing? Because we are part of the problem. And that's what my research found, is that so many women hold other women back, just like you said. And so if we were able to support and encourage and lift each other up, how much more of a difference could we make? I mean, Amie, you think about it. If you and I are in the same organization and we are working and we both apply for a position that's a vertical position, and you want it and I want it, but I support you and you support me, and then you get it and you move up, who are you going to remember on your way up? The fact that I supported you. You're going to lift me up, and lift as we climb is my biggest thing. How to support each other as we grow our careers up the ladder, whether that's entrepreneurship or through corporate.
I think that's so true, because you do remember those things, and you especially remember like, oh, this girl was over here, mistreating me or trying to bully me, or, there's all that catty office stuff that tends to happen, but all that stuff gets remembered, good or bad. So yeah, that's absolutely so true. When you have somebody who works well with you and who supports you and wants to be, on your team and vice versa, there's magic there. Even I have these two, like I call my biz besties, and we basically all do a little bit of the same thing, different target markets for the most part, but we don't have that feeling of competition with each other. Even though in some ways, we could at times have the same ideal client, we don't even see that. It's just like, okay, here's what you do. Here's my advice. Here's this, and it's all like genuine, like caring. Imagine if that was in the workforce too.
Absolutely. And that we all saw each other as collaborators as opposed to competition.
Yes.
We would have so many more advancements. It would be ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and I always call it, I always say that, I had it, employee mindset. It's like a real thing where that you work from X time to X time, whether it's 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. I don't know anybody who actually works 9 to 5, but I've never met anybody who started at 9 o'clock and got off at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So 8 to 5, say you get your paycheck, you do your things, you put in, most people put in the minimum or just enough to keep going, because most people, they don't want to put in too much, because they're like, oh, well, then I'm just taking on more and taking on more and taking on more without the recognition. Or like you said, they have that whole mindset of everybody's replaceable. So they'll step it up and do just enough extra. You know what I mean? But when you're looking at it from a place of everybody supporting each other, and it's all a team, and there's no, well, let's see how quick till she falls on her face. And there's none of that. Everybody benefits, everybody at every level.
Yeah. I mean, everyone wins, and it's all about company culture at that point, and how to support each other as a team and not as individuals running in separate, totally different races.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and talking about, I think we talked about this just before we started recording, about being kind of that overworked and underpaid, underappreciated person being told like, hey, you're replaceable. That is such, and I don't know if that's just American culture or if that's kind of like employee mindset internationally, but I feel like more so in American culture, that if people are afraid to take time off. People are afraid to say, hey, my kid's sick, I need to go home. And there was a study done, and I don't remember who did the study, but it was like most female employees will go to work sick and save their sick days for when their kids are sick.
I believe it. And that was, so the research that I did that looked at what the obstacles and challenges are that women go through when climbing the corporate ladder. And there were 4 main obstacles that we face. And the first is family obligations. I mean, women do nearly twice the amount of childcare and housework than men do. For every 1 hour a man does housework or childcare, a woman does 1.7 hours. So almost double. The second obstacle that women faced was limited advancement opportunities. So whether it be because they need to go back to school and further their education, or they feel like they've kind of hit this plateau where they've hit this age and they don't know where to really go. And then the third challenge was gender-based discrimination. Now, I went into my research really thinking that it was going to be the good old boys club holding us back. And we have all faced those instances where we hit Bubba and, Bubba's like rubbing his belly and laughing at his own jokes, and he's wearing suspenders, and he's that middle-aged white man that thinks he's funny. And we've all dealt with him. But more often than not, women talked about other women that had held them back. Mm-hmm. And the fourth challenge that my research reported was that because 50% of the women at the C level in healthcare specifically talked about how they lacked confidence. And then when I took that research and talked to women at all different levels in all different industries, that number went to almost nearly 80%.
Wow. 80% is a huge number. And I can relate. I knew a Bubba. I used to I did finance for a yacht dealership when I was like 20 something, right? And before I actually kind of knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. Uh-huh. And he was the general manager, the Bubba I knew. And it's funny because I could see, like, as you're talking about him rubbing his belly, I could totally see this guy doing that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He probably got suspenders on and he thinks he's funny. Yep.
And the funny thing is, and I was pretty naive. I'll totally admit to that. Because like I said, I was like 19, 20-ish. I wasn't even 21 yet. And he had tasked me with doing all the finance for all the yachts. Well, the people who do finance, whether it's on your new car loan or a boat loan or whatever, they get a commission. Well, what he told me is, well, technically I'm the finance manager. And since you're my assistant, then I get to collect the commission and I'll spiff you. Like, I'll let them know to give you a small percentage of that. And so the funny thing about that is he had been there, without getting too far into it, another woman who was at a management position had filed a sexual harassment claim. And
against Bubba?
Against Bubba. Uh-huh. And I don't know all the details of that or whatever, because some of it was confidential. But I do know that my story about witnessing a comment that had been made caused me to be pushed out of my job. Not only to not have my commission, but pushed out of my job, which was okay because it ended up leading me down. I mean, it's not okay, but I ended up leading into a better path with better employers who really looked after me. But that was my experience with Bubba. And like I said, I was like 19 or 20 at the time. I was collecting a weekly paycheck or however often they paid us. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, okay. And I just I thought that was how things went until I kind of grew as, somebody in business, and I grew as, somebody who is educating themselves because I have a degree in business now. And I'm like, oh, that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Bubba totally played on your naivety and youth.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that's like a story that I don't often share because I'm not sure like what kind of backlash I could possibly get. I mean, it's the truth. The truth is the truth. So, but yeah, it was crazy. But even just seeing, and it's funny because my career was in construction, which is a very masculine industry. Mm-hmm. But I was treated better and more equally in my construction company than I was at that job. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get that, even though that was, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago almost.
Yeah.
I still suspect those types of things happen. So I'm glad that more women are letting their voices be heard. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that it's getting into like the political sector. I mean, I'm not overly political, but I do like to see that like people are voicing their opinions. It's becoming more common talk. And I feel like that talking about it and bringing awareness around it, because like I said, I was so naive. I didn't know that something like that was not ethical. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But as we talk about these things and as we share the things that we know are not right, and we share the research and we share the statistics, I feel like some of that gives us the courage to speak up. Because think about when you worked in your corporate job, how terrifying was it for you to be like, all right, I need a raise. I've been working here for all this time, and maybe this company doesn't do annual like raises all the time. And to go in and ask your boss, hey, I feel like I've, like to almost have to sell yourself and be like, hey, I've been working really hard and I've been doing all these things and I've taken on all these extra tasks and I feel like I earn an extra, dollar or $2 or certain percentages. That was like, even for me, like when I would do that and have a conversation with my boss, who is still even practically like a family member, I was terrified. There was zero confidence there. Like I was confident in my ability, but I was never confident walking into that conversation.
Well, and in the book that I wrote, Unlimited, Conquering the Myth of the Glass Ceiling, I know one of the girls that I've worked with, she used step-by-step approach that I have in the book, and she requested and received a $10,000 raise based on those steps. But I mean, you think about it, like when I had that same conversation with my employers, it was based on insurance. I was pregnant and my husband was laid off. I mean, it was right after September 11th. Everybody and their dogs was laid off. And so we didn't have health insurance. And I went to my employer and I just said, is there any way that they offered health insurance for the office staff, but not the field staff? And so I said, is there any way that I could work in the office too and get health insurance? And they said, and I had told them it was because I was pregnant. And they were like, well, can't you get on your husband's health insurance? And I said, well, he's been laid off. And they said, well, and you're pregnant? Well, that was stupid. I mean, it's just the stories I think that happen. We have no concept of how people run businesses and make these decisions. But honestly, when you look at it, the power is in your hands to either be treated like that or go somewhere else. Yeah.
And I feel like the sad thing is because of that like whole employee mindset of, well, I'm replaceable here. And then I could also be replaceable at the next place. Like, I'm just going to suck it up and put my head down, get back to work and keep moving forward. I think a lot of people are afraid to even go on job interviews, and they have the mindset that it's the same everywhere.
Well, and that's what I thought too. I thought, I could go to another company and be another undervalued employee again and spend the rest of my life as someone's undervalued employee. Or I can start my own company and make our mission to be the place where employees feel valued and respected. And that's what we did. And I knew the success would happen.
Yeah, it's a byproduct.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think, now that you mention it kind of in that way, I feel like, because I do look towards my former boss as kind of a mentor, and he was an entrepreneur. He'd come up through the ranks, through the construction ranks and through the management ranks at a corporation. But at heart, he was an entrepreneur, and he ran even our sector of the company from an entrepreneur standpoint. Like, I'm going to run it how I want. I'm going to take care of people how I want. And he did. He was very generous and very understanding, and just never the type to overreact, which I feel like is a good lesson for me, having employees of my own and also even having kids, like, yes. But I see how him coming from having been a business owner himself and then kind of shifting back into corporate, that made a huge difference from somebody who only ever just worked straight up the ladder. Like, knowing like, okay, sometimes it does take a lot to come up with payroll. Sometimes you have to do certain things. And you know what? In order to keep those good employees, you have to take really good care of them. You have to treat them well and treat them like humans, And so, yeah, that now that you mentioned it, that like kind of brings back some of that thought process. Like, oh, yeah, he was an entrepreneur. That's probably why he was so awesome.
Yeah. And I think that just figuring out your leadership style is one of the things that would really benefit, especially women as entrepreneurs. And, there's different leadership styles. And one of the things that women excel at is being nurturing and collaborative. And that is really, you think we're in a really unique spot in time when we have these millennials coming up, and that's the type of leadership style they excel in, the more nurturing, collaborative, supportive environment. And gone are the days or the do as I say do leadership. Well, women are more transformational, which is more of the supportive type leadership than men are. So we're at a really unique juncture in time where women can really shine in their leadership if they're given the chance. Yeah. And they step out of their own fear to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And I read something about millennials the other day, and, kind of how some of the older generation kind of views them, and they think, oh, well, they're lazy or whatever. And I feel like I'm a little too old to actually be a millennial. I think I'm like right on the cusp of where they have that cutoff, but I don't necessarily see it that way. Like, I feel like things are just a lot different, really. And I feel like with women taking advantage, and not taking advantage in a negative way, but taking advantage of the resources of coming up through an MLM, which love MLMs, by the way. I think that they've opened so many doors and so many opportunities for women, especially like the women who thought that, oh, I'm just only ever going to be a stay-at-home mom, even though they wanted something more. They thought that that was off limits and out of reach for so long. And now something like an MLM or these online type of businesses have opened a whole nother door for women. So I feel like, yes, we're on the wave of something big and something so transformational that I don't think it's going to take 100 years.
Not if we have anything to do with it.
That's right.
Yes. And it's about awareness, but awareness isn't in itself going to change anything. It's about a commitment to making it better, making a better future for the future generations. Yeah,
agree. Yeah, knowing about something isn't the same as doing something about it. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Agree. Yeah. Absolutely agree. I know that you have a really awesome free gift for everybody, the 10 secrets female entrepreneurs must know before starting a service-based business. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about that?
Sure. It's the 10 secrets that, based on my journey, what I know about running my own company and things that you can't just Google, what are the secrets to entrepreneurship? So these are the things that I said, one of them is like, guard your yes. Women are so typically people pleasers. And so it's really taking that yes. That yes is your time. It's your most valuable and precious gift. So how do you use that and invest in that well to support yourself? That's just one of the secrets. So, but it's 10 of the most tried and true secrets that I found on my own journey, in a PDF, downloadable PDF that women can really find the secret to entrepreneurship.
I love that. And yeah, I feel like learning how to say no, it's a hard thing for us.
It is.
But it's setting that boundary is one of the most important things that you can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to see the other 9.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, tell us where we can find you. I know that, we can find you in the Huffington Post and Forbes and all those places, but where can everybody connect with you on social media?
My social is Dr. Cortney Baker. And you can also go to my website. It's CortneyBaker.com. And Cortney doesn't have a U in it. So it's CORTNEY.
Perfect.
CortneyBaker.com.
Yay, I love that. Well, everybody make sure that you swipe up on your phones and click the link in the show notes so that you can take advantage of this amazing free gift and get your 10 secrets that you must know before you start a service-based business as an entrepreneur. And be sure that you give Cortney a follow so that we can speed this up and make sure that all of us women are getting our fair share and our fair shake before 100 years from now.
That's right. Screw 100 years.
That's right. Hashtag screw 100 years. All right, you guys, we would love to hear your comments on this. We would love to hear your feedback. So feel free to leave a review of this amazing episode with Cortney, and we will see you guys later.